All right, let's talk about something we've all struggled with. How do you tell someone something they need to hear without being a total jerk about it? That tough feedback that could really help them grow, but you're terrified it's just going to crush their spirit? Well, that's exactly what we're tackling today. We're going to break down something called Radical Candor. It's this simple but honestly game-changing framework from Kim Scott that promises to help you build way better relationships and, get this, do the best work of your life.
So the whole idea for this came from a really interesting moment in Kim Scott's career. Her team sent her this article, and the gist was, people would rather work for a total jerk who's good at their job than a super nice boss who's completely incompetent. And that really got her thinking. Is that it? Are those really our only two options? You either have to be the brilliant but abrasive leader that everyone's kind of scared of, or you're the super well-liked but ultimately ineffective one? It feels like a terrible choice, right?
And that right there, that's the feedback dilemma that plays out in pretty much every office everywhere. We know people need feedback to get better. It's essential. But actually giving it, oof, it feels like you're walking a tightrope. Lean too far one way, you're a jerk. Lean too far the other, and you're useless. So Scott's answer to this whole dilemma, well, it's wrapped up in a story that basically changed her entire career.
Okay, so picture this. You've just given a huge presentation to the founders of Google. I mean, the top of the top. The business is doing great, and you walk out of that room feeling like you're on top of the world. A total genius, right? That was Kim Scott. But then her boss at the time, Sheryl Sandberg, pulls her aside. She starts with some really genuine praise, but then she says, hey, there was just one little thing. You say a lot. And Kim just kind of brushes it off, it's just a verbal tick, no big deal.
And that's when Sheryl just stops. She looks Kim right in the eye and says this. When you say every third word, it makes you sound stupid. Whoa. Now here's the crazy part. That wasn't mean. It was actually incredibly kind. Her boss cared enough about her to say the hard thing, the brutally honest thing, because she knew that anything softer just wasn't going to land. It was the wake-up call Kim absolutely needed. And that moment, that's the heart of Radical Candor.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? How do we get to that place of being direct, but also kind? Well, it all starts with this beautifully simple framework. It's just a 2x2 grid, but it completely solves that feedback dilemma we were talking about. And it's all built on just two core ideas.
The first one, this is your vertical axis, is all about caring personally. Think of this as the give a damn axis. You know how we're always told to be professional at work, which usually means be a robot and leave your feelings at the door. This pushes back on that hard. It says no, bring your whole self to work. Build real relationships. Actually care about the people you work with as human beings, not just cogs in some machine.
Then you've got the second dimension, your horizontal axis, which is to challenge directly. And this goes against pretty much everything we were taught growing up, right? If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Well, it turns out at work, it's actually your job to say it. But here's the absolute key. You have to do both. You have to care personally and challenge directly at the exact same time.
And when you put those two axes together, boom, you get this incredibly useful framework. Up here in the top right, when you're caring personally and challenging directly, that's the magic quadrant, Radical Candor. But when you fail on one of those, or even both, you fall into one of these other three quadrants, and these are the traps where most of us live.
Honestly, the best way to really get radical candor is to look at what happens when we screw it up. So let's talk about these three communication traps. Okay, so first, if you challenge, but you don't care, you're an obnoxious aggression. This is basically front stabbing. Then, down in the dumps, if you don't care and you don't challenge, you're in manipulative insincerity, total backstabbing territory. But, and this is a big but, the place where most of us, most of the time, make our biggest mistakes is in this last quadrant, ruinous empathy. This is where we genuinely care about someone, but we're so worried about hurting their feelings that we just don't say anything. We fail to challenge.
And to really show you just how damaging this can be, let me tell you the story of a guy we'll call Alex. Now, Alex was a great guy, super smart, charming, funny, the kind of person everyone on the team just loved working with. There was just one tiny problem. His work was terrible. I mean, just consistently riddled with sloppy mistakes. And for 10 solid months, his manager, who was Kim Scott, by the way, could not bring herself to tell him the truth. She was totally stuck in ruinous empathy. She'd give him this vague, praise-like feedback, stuff like, "Oh, Alex, you're so great. This is a really great start."
just hoping, praying he'd somehow get the hint. Of course, he never did. And the really tricky thing here is that her avoidance wasn't just about trying to spare his feelings. It was also kind of selfish. She was trying to protect her own reputation as a nice boss.
So eventually, the inevitable happened. She had to fire him. And his reaction? It was just a total gut punch. He looked at her completely blindsided and just said, "Why didn't you tell me? I thought you all cared about me." See, he didn't feel like she'd been nice. He felt betrayed. In trying to be nice, she had been profoundly unkind because she robbed him of the chance to ever get better. And that is the huge lesson here. Withholding critical feedback is not kindness, it's just ruinous empathy.
Okay, so we get the why now, right? We've seen just how painful it can be when we get this wrong. So the big question is, how do we actually start doing this? How do we put radical candor into practice?
Well, there's a very specific order of operations, and this part is so important. And guess what? It starts with you. You have to ask for feedback before you even think about giving it. You've got to prove you can take it before you dish it out. Then, once you've done that, you give guidance that's both praise and criticism. After that, you check in to see how it landed, and finally, you work on encouraging this behavior in everyone else. So, to get started, you need a good go-to question. And please, don't just ask, "Hey, got any feedback for me?" That gets you absolutely nowhere. You need to be specific, with a question just like this one. What could I do or stop doing that would make it easier to work with me? And then, this is key, after you ask it, just shut up. Embrace that uncomfortable silence. Count to 6 in your head. I promise someone will almost always jump in to fill that silence with the truth you actually need to hear.
Now, this next idea really deepens what it means to care personally. See, it's not just about being nice. It's about really understanding what makes each person on your team tick. And Scott breaks it down into 2 types of people. You have your rock stars. These are the people who are the stable, solid foundation of your team. They love their work, they're masters of their craft, but they aren't necessarily looking to climb a ladder. Then you have your superstars. These folks are on a super steep growth path. They're always looking for the next challenge, the next promotion. And here's the thing, a great team needs both. And a great leader knows who's who and how to support each of them so they can thrive.
So, let's zoom out for a second. Why does any of this really matter? Because this is so much more than just another management technique from a business book. It's really a philosophy for how we interact with each other, both at work and, honestly, everywhere else.
When we get this right, the payoffs are just huge. We build real, trusting relationships with people. We create work cultures where people can actually do their best work and feel happy and supported while doing it. And, in a world that feels more and more divided, learning how to care about someone while also challenging them directly, that might be exactly what we need to start talking to each other again, instead of just about each other.
So I'm going to leave you with this one question to chew on. Doesn't matter if you're a leader, a teammate, a friend, a partner. What is the one radically candid conversation that you know you need to have, but you've been avoiding? Because actually having it, well, it might just change everything.